obviously I've not posted on YouTube in a while, but this will be going on to YouTube, clearly, because you're probably watching on YouTube, unless you're in my chat right now as I'm doing it live. However, the Fantasy League is back, and in doing so, I'm going to go over the first week of SPL, and in my opinion, where I'm going to put my fantasy points. You don't have to follow me, you can just listen to my ideas, and maybe you'll get some yourself. Obviously, on the right-hand side of your screen, you can still see at the moment what the teams are, so obviously you don't recognize the symbols in chat, like Rando or Woony, who the hell's on those teams. Well, that'll just be there to help you out. So we'll start off with Thursday, and we're just going to go through week 1 for now, and probably continue doing this throughout the season as well. But week 1, we're going to see Team Eager versus Team Allegiance. Obviously, if you don't know who each of these teams is, Eager is basically the old Cog Boys plus Devios and Zapman. So an interesting composition there. Aurora Zapman have played together before on Team Eager, so they've got some synergy there. Devios, probably the strangest pickup of this team, just because it's the newest one to the team. Not necessarily a strange pick, but he's a very good player still. Will he be good in the meta? Well, Team Allegiance, you know those guys. It's Lassus, as well as his boys of Incon, Matty Pocket, Oceans, who's one of those hunters that could become the next big thing, just like Visham started out last year. I think Team Allegiance are looking pretty strong here. I want to see how Matty Pocket versus Devios goes up, but Matty Pocket really has stepped up in the solo lane more than I expected him to. So Allegiance are actually looking pretty strong, but I can't discredit Eager here in any way, shape or form, and this one's going to be too close to call. On paper, based off the teams here, I would normally side with Eager. I want to say their composition is stronger just because of the experience, as well as I think they'll have a little bit more synergy to begin with. But Flex, well, now Team Allegiance, have shown they have some of that already and have done pretty well, but they didn't do as well as they would have liked to during the relegation qualifiers. So for the first one of the day, it's going to be a split 1-1 down the middle. I think that's going to go between Eager and Allegiance for there. Next up, Randozos up against Denial Esports. Now these two teams, as you can see, they've both been around before. At least the players have. Scary D, Gars, Adoro, Polar Bear, Mike, and Meerkat making up the Randozos. They did manage to make it in basically towards the end and did okay for themselves. I don't think it's that strong a squad though. The Denial squad, however, is a reformed squad of some of the boys that did so well at the World Championships, Team Enemy. So it's going to see the likes of Visham, as well as Masked is going to be on that team alongside Benji, Mace to the Face, and Shadowcube. This team seems pretty strong to me overall. I think they're going to be at least, I want to say at least mid-table this season for the Denial boys. And the Randozos, well, on paper they sound very good, but I don't know how well they're going to do overall. I'm going to go Denial here. I was really tempted with a split, but the more I think about it, I think I'm going to go Denial for the 2-0 on this one. I think Randozos will still have plenty of opportunities to get themselves into the Pro League and get themselves going, but I don't think they'll do it against Denial this week. I think Denial will be looking for blood to show that this roster switch up has worked in their favour. Next up, Woony Tunes versus Enemy. Woony Tunes is basically the most OP team that NA could come up with this year. It's Cloud9 plus Snoopy and the Boosh. Sounds pretty good, right? I mean, yeah. There's not much to really say apart from it's Cloud9 plus Snoopy and the Boosh. And they're going to be up against Enemy. Now, the Enemy roster is not the roster that went to the World Championships. The only remaining players, I believe, are Chaos and Pain Beyond of that. They picked up Panda Cat, who they used to play with a Legion of Carrots back in the day, before Panda Cat had to take time off to play Smite, and that's why they picked up Visham back then. So Panda Cat is around. He's very, very aggressive, though, and if he can get going, he could be pretty good for himself. They've also got Variziel, I always get his name wrong, Variziel, in the jungle, alongside Marauder in the solo lane. Those two, not too bad players, but I think their lack of experience in the Pro League is what's going to hurt them. And going up against a team called Woony Tunes that has that roster in it, I don't think it's going to be that easy for them. So I'm going to go 2-0 to Woony Tunes for this one. Next up is Pantera versus Torpedo Gaming. Now Pantera versus Torpedo Gaming, pretty simplistic, pretty obvious about what it's going to be. Pantera is Epsilon, the world champions. Torpedo Gaming, the new challengers on the scene, who've done very well in the Challenger Cup. They're a pretty strong team, the Torpedo Gaming side. If you've not seen them before, you may recognise them from the days of old Carino, Ninja Bobat, joining Game Hunter, as well as their duo lane of Moex and now Murder, formerly known as Kanye Life. That roster of Torpedo Gaming is very strong, but I think they're still going to have teething problems up against Pantera. I do not see this going any other way than Pantera taking the 2-0. Pretty simple. Next up is Hungry for More. Now you can't see the team on the right, but it's Leftovers. Team Leftovers versus Hungry for More. Now both these teams were teams that formed based off all the roster switch-ups in Europe. And when you look through the rosters, you'll pretty much recognize a few of the names on each roster. Hungry for More, for example, has Ataraxia and Pretty Prime. They've also been joined by Captain Twig, Variety, and Zindan. Now the big thing about Hungry for More is I really wish they'd changed the name from Hungry for More to Time to Prove Yourself is what I'd probably call it, because most of these rosters, most of that roster have had issues in the past in one form or another. Criticisms from the community and casters as well in terms of ability and how well they've played. Especially Variety and Captain Twig last year. It's been a rough year for those two. But they've both got past experience that if they can flourish in the right environment, it could work out well for them. They've both finished first in different tournaments. Obviously Variety back with Team Coast or Worth Gaming, if you remember those. He has got the ability to finish in the top half, and teams have recognised this clearly because they're still picking him up. Captain Twig didn't have the greatest time from switching from mid to jungle, but they feel that they can make it work on Hungry for More, so we'll see how that works out. The biggest other change on that roster is Zindan. Never really entered the Pro League too much, always a fringe player, was a jungler, now going into a support role. Not an easy role to really just transition straight into and feel comfortable on, especially with how the meta is right now and how difficult it is to keep up with farmers as a support player, as well as the itemization changes. So Hungry for More's roster is one that I think should hit at least mid-table if everything works out for them. However, we'll see how that goes as time goes on, because realistically, I could see, like, if one of these players don't perform, they could end up kicking someone. Team Leftovers, one of the newer teams. This is Badger's team. Badger from Fnatic. Now he's made his own team basically and put them all together. If you don't know the roster, I'm just checking out my other screen to make sure I don't get any names wrong out of respect. Nika alongside Jungler, who is also known as Fails, if you remember him. Cherio in the mid lane, and finally Arkil in the AD carry role. So two players, Arkil and Nika, going to be new to the Pro League this year. Rookie years generally you can flourish, you can get seen as a potentially bright, huge star, but your first year generally is the most troublesome, where you get yourself grounded in the Pro League. Alongside that, they've got Cherio in the mid lane. He does play in a quite a high ping though, but his mid lane play is pretty strong. Fails has an up and down career so far. He's never really flourished on any of the teams in terms of being a standout. Well, I guess he has been a standout player on the teams he's played on, but not really like been affluent in the Pro League enough. And then Badger, he's probably the biggest name on that roster who's put this team together, and he's trying to make this one work this year. It's called Team Leftovers, I feel, for a reason. They feel like they all didn't know where they wanted to go, so they all ended up forming a team. I think these could do okay this season. I couldn't say like they'll be definite bottom 2, bottom 3. I think they could finish mid-table, if not a little bit higher, if they put the work in and the team gels together. This is an interesting game though between these two, because I think they've both got a point to prove, and I actually think I'm going to go with Hungry for More here for the 2-0 in this one. I think Hungry for More should be the ones looking for the blood a little bit more. Leftovers, yeah, they had a decent run during the relegations, but I think they could have done a little bit better. I'm just going to quickly change the scene over as well, just so we can have a little look at the other half of... Look at that, I'm a genius. We'll just look at the other half of the games of that first week. Next up is Fnatic versus Dignitas. Now, Fnatic and Dignitas both have had roster changes, as you can see. Suntouch has joined the boys of Dignitas alongside, I want to say it was someone I know, and I've already forgotten it. Rip me for being rude and not remembering who it was. Dark Dodo, who played on Myrmidons. Suntouch been around for a long time, played multiple roles, now going back to support role for himself. So Dignitas with those two changes after losing Variety as well as Frezzy, they've now picked up those two. So the core synergy between the jungle and the mid laner of Frostiak and Shadow Nightmare is still there. They've still got Renz on that roster. Renz last year didn't have a great season during the Pro League, honestly. Kind of looked a little shit. However, he turned the fuck up during the relegation, during Super Regionals, where he showed his true ability and that why people rated him as he did. If he can perform the way he did at the LAN and take that into this year, Dignitas have a pretty strong shot, especially because they've got a bit of experience with Suntouch now on that roster of like being around and in the game in high-level competitive games. I mean, take into account Frostiak and Shadow Nightmare both have been up there too. They played on some pretty high-level teams themselves and almost took themselves to Worlds once or twice. The other teams they've got, the other person they've also picked up there, Dark Dodo. If you've not heard of him, he played a little bit for the Myrmidons last year. Didn't really stay as a staple main roster, but did do some work there. I'll be interested to see how his solo lane plays out, because he's not really been known for his solo lane too much. Fnatic, meanwhile, well, they had the departure of Captain Twig and Badger from the end of the season, their first roster changes ever, and they've picked up two rookies to the Pro League to an extent. Big Man Tings has flirted with competitive play before, done pretty good things over in the Challenger Cup for quite a considerable amount of time, been on a lot of teams that have made top 3, if not hit the relegations, but never really found himself in relegations. For him to go into the support role means that they really see something big inside of him. Reels must have played with him in ranked or something along the way and seen his ability and his confidence in the role. Big shoes to step into though to join Reels in that line, not to be either A, overly aggressive, or B, overly defensive. He's going to have to play to Reels' strengths, and that's what this team's going to be looking for this season, is synergizing their 2 new players. And in the jungle, they're also going to get a new player as well. And I think that's the big key here, is that their support and their jungler are both new to the role. Not necessarily new to the role, but new to the team. And that could cause some synergistic issues with the whole team as a whole. They've still got the raw backbone of the team with the solo, the mid, and the AD carry. But these 2 roles are so flirtatious in terms of being around the map, and their mobility is going to be important for them to do good things. And that's going to be Jiffy in the jungle. Now, Jiffy's been known for a long time in the Smite community, at least over in Europe. He's well recognized as a very strong player. I expect to see him do pretty well this year, but he's probably going to have nerves in the first few games, I expect, in the Pro League. Not necessarily nerves, but maybe he'll try to overdo it to show off his ability and could cause himself some issues. It's still Fnatic, though. I still want to say it's Fnatic, even though they've lost. I feel like Badger was a bigger hit to them, honestly, than Twig was. It felt like they relied a lot more on Badger than they did on Twig during the games. So Big Man Ting's shoes are going to have to be pretty full, is the best way I can really put that. I'd probably go here with... This is a tough one, actually. With both having new roster changes and such, I actually feel this could be pretty even between the 2. It's going to be like, who's going to play better? I mean, it's a new support. Big Man Tinder's got more experience than Suntouch in support role right now, so I'd give the favour to Fnatic just on the newbie there. Both got newbies, technically. And then they've got a new jungler versus a new solo laner. So it's Frostyak versus Jiffy in the jungle. We've got to take into account Zeros versus Shadow Nightmare if we're going to talk about the junglers as well. I'm probably going to go Fnatic. I'm going Fnatic. I'll go 2-0 Fnatic. I was really considering a split, but I'm thinking I'm going to go with Fnatic there. Just on past experiences as well, I think that's where we'll see that go. Maybe there's a chance Dignitas will split that one. Maybe I'm wrong. You'll find out. You can give me your feedback yourselves. Next up, Pantera versus TLO. If you don't know who TLO is, we just mentioned him. It's Badger's team. Team Leftovers versus Epsilon. Now currently known as Pantera. Yeah. Onwards to the very last game, which is, actually not last game, there's one more game after that if you didn't notice. Envy versus Eager. Now, Envious versus Eager is an interesting game. Envious have MLC Stealth now on the roster, as you can see, in the bottom left-hand side. Yeah, third one across. They've got MLC as well as Omega in the solo lane, so changes from last year's SPL for Envious boys. On paper, that roster seems very strange and very scary is the best way I can put it. Obviously, with removing Incon, and Allied now, it's allowed them to have a little bit more flexibility in their roles, I want to say. They brought in 2 specialists for roles. Cyclone moving to AD carry role. We'll see how he performs this season. It's not an easy transition overall, but he did play on Xbox for the World Championships, so we'll see how he works out continuing into the Pro League this time around. Kiki's probably the best player on the team, at least in my opinion, for all-around synergistic play. And they're up against Eager. Now, DVS versus Omega is one of those games that goes back to the old days. Zapman with a Raw up against Kiki and Cyclone. I think we could see some fireworks over in that dual lane between these 2 teams more often than not. And on this one, I'm probably... See, because I've not really thought this through when I was doing this. I was just like, let's just do him. I'm not sure where I want to go here. Where do I want to go? Gonna go with Envy. Yeah, we'll go 2-0 Envy. It's either a 1-1 or a 2-0, I was thinking. And Envy, I think, are going to be the team that comes out on strong. I think Eager's still got synergy issues that they're going to have to work through. I think the biggest issue for Team Eager this year will be personalities clashing more than anything else. I think that's the thing, is there's a lot of leaders on that team and not enough teammates is the best way I want to put it. There's another phrase you can use, but I'm not going to use it. But yeah, there's a lot of leaders and not enough, bull pit. workers more than anything else. And I think that's where the biggest issues for Eager were. Envy, I think they're going to have some synergy issues to begin with, but I think they could go off pretty well. It's going to come down to mid and jungle synergizing together for Envy, as whether they're going to shine or not this season. They should be top 3 though. I expect them to be top 3, and I think Eager will be top half, if not top 4. Finally, game of the week will be on a Monday. Monday is game of the week. It's game of the week. Game of the week. Paradigm versus Fnatic. I know you can't see that it says Paradigm here because I've covered this up. So let's just fix that quickly so you can just see. I've been doing that all day. Paradigm versus Fnatic is the game of the week. My oh my, 2 fantastic teams. If you saw them, if you thought about them last season, this is even more interesting. Paradigm reached World Championships, did very, very well to take the #1 spot in the EU and get to Worlds. Fnatic also made it to Worlds after a little bit of disappointing performances, to be honest, during Super Regionals from Fnatic, and I think that's one of the reasons they made roster changes, especially because Worlds didn't go so well for them either. Paradigm unchanged. Them and Epsilon, I believe, are the only 2 teams in the whole of the SPL that have not changed their roster at all. So Paradigm should be up to date and ready to fight really this year. Fnatic, I think they're going to have teething problems in the first few games, the first few weeks at least, with their 2 new members. I'm going to go Paradigm 2-0 here, not to discredit Fnatic in any way, shape or form, but I really feel that Fnatic are going to have the teething problems that we're not going to see out of Paradigm. Paradigm should be on the same page, they should understand the meta, and they should be able to work in and find the cracks in Fnatic's armor, the small chinks that'll be up there just because the team hasn't synergized so well together. So as your first look at week 1, just for a very quick recap if you just tuned in the end. Split Eager versus Allegiance. Denial will beat Randozos. Woony Tunes will beat Enemy. Pantera, formerly Epsilon, will beat Torpedo. Hungry for More will beat Team Leftovers. Fnatic to beat Dig. Pantera to beat Team Leftovers, Envy to beat Eager, and finally, game of the week will be Paradigm to beat Fnatic. That's where my money's on. Have your say. If you don't agree with me, that's fine too, because, you know, we've all got opinions. Anyway, good luck in your fantasy draft, and maybe one day you'll beat me, but you won't, because you're bad.